Oh, okay, I see.
Hey,
What's
what do you
up?
think? What do you think of our new opening?
Pretty fancy.
It's fancy. I don't know if it's a little macabre. It doesn't have like that motivational music like people tend to have before their podcasts.
Something that gets everybody fired up, some rock song or something like that.
Well, like we did last week, with the inauguration music,
That's
that
great.
kind of thing. How does my microphone sound, by the way? Do I sound nice and microphony? Do I sound nice and?
It sounds as creepy as you look, and you also,
Sweet.
you kind of look like you're in like a little like upper corner of the room, like that big stucco behind you. It looks like
It's an optical illusion.
like Spider-Man, and you're just like hunched in the corner doing a podcast.
It's not far off from that. It's you remember Willy Wonka when he was in that room, like he just walked around and he became like that's what I feel like now. Like no, I'm actually in a. This is a. It's good that you notice. A lot of people don't. So like when I have video meetings, I kind of go like this and I go up, so it's a white background,
You know,
but it's actually a slanted ceiling, and the dormered area of my house.
I got those too because I have a cape, so I have like the dormers, and so every room that's upstairs has like some kind of slanted walls or whatever, and that's where I had my office for a bit when I was working from home.
Oh yeah, tell everyone you had an office and a Are you still in the hangar?
So I still have space there, but so for a little while, of course, we had to work from home. Period. Right? Nobody could go into the office, and it being in the airport, you had to really follow the rules. So I used a couple of bedrooms in the house upstairs, and I didn't like any of the slanted walls. I felt 6 foot two. I felt like so like
Yeah, yeah.
cramped in, and so that was also I used the hangar a bit. Still partners with those guys, but I had my own building for a few years in my last company that I had for the recruiting firm. I owned for about 10 years. I owned the building, and I really think I liked the autonomy. And my wife pointed out to me at one point, she's like, "We have you have an apartment in one of the brownstones. Like, why don't you just make that into an office? Then you could get out of the house."
But what made you pick a hangar?
What's that?
Like what made you pick an airport
Well,
hangar?
because my partner owns a number of planes, and so he had converted one into office space. And I hired a bunch of people for him in the past, and then we partnered up. So we had space there. It's beautiful space. It's like less than 3 years old. Everything's top of the line, but it's still like rented space, and it's also in a pretty like restrictive area. Like you can only do so much. I can't just like have a cigar or they frown on like a humidor in the office or that kind of
No,
stuff.
it was a regional airport, right? It wasn't like a gigantic airport, like a national one.
Albany's an international airport, but in the sense that I think you can fly. You
I
can
mean,
fly.
it wasn't like a pain in the ass to get there, right? Like to me, that would be like the airport's a nightmare to travel
Oh
to.
no, it's like 5 miles from my house, and it's
Gotcha.
through like a back entrance, like a private road.
Mm.
It's in a hangar, so I don't go through the entrance everybody else would go through. I still have a badge for it and all that stuff.
So people
But
are wondering why are we talking about this? Well, it's our inaugural show. I mean, last week was an intro to it. Uh,
why we're talking about anything we talk about.
but I think it's important that they get to know the hosts of the show. For those who haven't seen us around now, Chris, you've done a couple of videos, but you're known more as the successful recruiter who kind of lurks on the groups and chimes in. You've had a so before we get into that, because we're here to help everyone each week, right? With our words of wisdom and not just our words of wisdom, but words of wisdom that we've come across and
Yeah,
just
highlighting
talking
great,
about right just
great.
some of the cool things going on in cyberland for recruiters over the last week. But tell them about your background, man, and don't brag. Tell them your gig, your success, and you're everywhere. But God, give us your bio, man.
Sure. So I've been in recruiting for about 17 years. I, like a lot of people, didn't think that I didn't plan on being in recruiting. I thought I was going to do something else. Got into recruiting because it sounded easy, right? Just interview people, pick one. How hard can it be, right?
Yeah, yeah.
We all know that's absolutely not the case. As luck would have it, in that first year, well, so I grew up working on like commission only jobs. My first job at 11 was paper route, right? And we only made money based on what we had.
A paper route. That's good.
Paper route. Oops, sorry, I'm not speaking, not close up to the mic. I got to get a microphone. I need to be fancy like Neil. So,
I went to the headset mic, but I got this gorgeous, unbelievably high-end mic but it gives an echo without the headset. So but it's wonderful. It sounds, it sounds like I'm on a Howard Stern show, like this one. It probably sounds better with my mic here like this, but it just doesn't sound like the other one,
Hopefully I'm a little closer. Right? Somebody said get closer to the mic, so sorry about that.
Yes, you sound better now.
Sometimes I can mumble too. So I got into recruiting because it sounded easy. I was wrong, but the first year I made pretty good money. And the reason I mentioned the commission thing was, I had a paper route when I was growing up. I worked a couple jobs when I moved out of the house at 18, selling suits, selling cell phones. Everything was heavily commissioned. And so I was comfortable with it. So when the opportunity came to join a small agency, I thought, well, all right, I'm comfortable with this. I'll give it a shot.
Wait, what is paper route? The paper route made you comfortable?
Yeah, because you make money based on, so a paper route, you're not like guaranteed a paycheck when you're a little kid. You're 11 years old, right?
I thought you get it and you go around, you collect, you get the $1.50 for the month or whatever it is, and you throw the paper over your shoulder when your dad's driving and he's the one doing all the work.
No, I walked it.
Oh, wow.
Walked it up and down a few streets, and eventually I subcontracted part of it to my sister and my little brother.
So there you go. You subcontracted. Did you issue a 1099?
So
yeah.
So no, but it was interesting because you had to keep customers happy. You had to give them what they wanted, and all of them had special freaking requests. It had to be in certain places or whatever, or they would complain, and then what would happen is the newspaper would ding you on the bill for that, right? So you had to deliver good customer service. You had to keep people happy. You weren't guaranteed a check because if all those people canceled or if they complained each week, that came out of the money that you got. You collected all the money, and then I had a bill from the newspaper that I had to pay. Like none of this was like automatic, right? So I collect, a few $100, and I had to give the newspaper 100 of it, something like that, right? So there's no safety net there. They provided a product for you to deliver.
No, that's good. I have friends that really got a great work ethic delivering papers, and then I had some that made a fortune, and their dads did all the work. They'd come up in the station wagon at the time. They'd get up at like 5 a.m. They'd load up like 3,000 papers. I'm like, why doesn't your dad just give you money? Like at that point, you know what I mean? Like there's no work. All right, they had to get up at 5 a.m. to deliver papers, right? So I'll give them that. But there's no work ethic for that. I don't think that teaches you anything.
My parents worked alternating shifts, so my mom was getting ready to getting home from the hospital, and my dad was sleeping because he had to go to work in like the usual shift. So now that was on my own. And then eventually I got to a point where I let's say I was making $200 a week. I would, for a couple of streets, I think I paid my sister about 30% of that to do one of the streets. And then my brother was like 5, and he couldn't leave the house. My parents were firm on that. But the Sunday paper you had to put together because it came in sections. Because some of it, like the ads.
Right. That was work. I remember that. Right.
You added not only so you had a couple of bags and you had a cart, right? And you only had so much capacity. So Tuesday papers were tiny, and you throw them all in one cart and throw them up and down the street. You're done. But like Sunday, I had to go in, go back. So Sunday was a lot of work. So I was paying him, I don't know, $5 a week. So
whatever. Why aren't there paper boys anymore? Paper persons, paper people. Why aren't there paper people anymore?
I don't know. You can't do it now. I think you just have to. They'll only do it with adult drivers now. They have them go to a distribution center sometime.
All right.
Pop them on the corner.
All right, so people want to know. Okay, so your recruiting prowess. Why are they going to listen to Chris Wessel? What are you bringing to the show, brother? Tell him, give it to him.
On tangents. So about 17 years in the business, about 12 years on my own or owning firms. About 10 years of that was an IT recruiting business that at my peak, we probably did about 5 million in billing. Now, of course, it's like a 75%, 25% mix of temp and direct hire. So I'm not, it's not 5 million.
Right, and you've had so much temp business lately. You've given back office staffing solutions zero business to date. For the record.
Before we met.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
Those from 2009 to 2018 is probably about, the peak was about 5 million, and the low end is probably about 1.5 million. And I had as many as 3 people working for me. I had one partner in that. And then since then, because I kind of parted ways with that partner, we had kind of different directions we want to go. So I shifted more towards, in the last couple of years, towards consulting work, like recruitment process consulting and executive search. So mostly all I work on is either retained searches, which was an interesting transition, really. Like every recruiter is like, oh, and I did a quick video the other day, or not, a couple months ago, about it. But and one of the topics I want to touch on from one of the posts actually kind of brushes up against that. But it was an interesting transition and mental shift to go from years and years of selling contingency, which selling contingency isn't really selling; it's not that hard, versus a different kind of sale where you get someone to give you some money. Every recruiter would like that, but then with it comes downsides too. There's a commitment there. You can't be as
but I never. Yeah, but if you're gonna do a contingency and really disappoint, you're losing them anyway. So I never, you know what I mean. So I never really got caught up on that like a lot of people do.
I get what you're saying. You definitely can't with a contingent search, though. I think at a certain point you can, if you handle it correctly, kind of walk away. Right? You can say, "Hey, we've given this a shot. We tried, whatever." You handle it diplomatically, but you could still say, "Hey, we've done what we can do. Here we go." You're in it for the long haul with a retained search, so I mean, you don't have that option.
Well, so you said contingencies. Not really selling, and I know what you meant, but did you feel that way? But did you feel that way before you moved over to retained executive search?
No, I definitely didn't feel that way. It felt like, in retrospect, I think it's not that it's not selling. In retrospect, it's a different sell. It's a different type of sell, and I didn't really have an appreciation for that because prior was 15, 16 years of contingency, and I mean. It's not that it's still selling because there's still prospecting, there's still calls, there's still emails, there's still a sales process. You still have to earn their trust. You still have to negotiate terms. Like it was an interesting. It opened up my perspective when I did the retained.
Yeah, I was talking.
Go back and look at it through a different light.
Right, well, but I think that light and that prism is so important for people that like watch these kind of shows or do their training to think about, because last week I was talking about a little bit on one of my other shows, but almost I think it's a disservice to have people start in contingency, because if they were to be forced to start in retainer, you'd be forced to really have to sell and really give a value prop, really need to close that to get this deal, really show why they should work with you. And when people go your way, the contingency part for them becomes a no-brainer. Like, all right, well, like it's almost like you're doing them a favor. I'll work with you. All right, on this one, I'll work with you on contingency. Like the sell becomes so much easier. Does that make sense? I don't know if I'm saying it the right way.
I do a little bit of that now. Like I have probably about half of my revenue comes from consulting, right? So that's another sell too, right? Because that's where I'm billing companies to help them with, the recruiting process or kind of augment their team in some capacity, right? Like I'm kind of a de facto recruiting manager for a nonprofit that has a couple of recruiters that aren't really that aggressive, and they don't really have a lot of process, and they didn't really have a lot of structure. So that's kind of a part. So there's that piece. So all that selling all those was totally different than selling. And then I've got like 2 retained searches going right now and a couple on deck. But then I also have like a couple of contingencies that pop up where, like you said, I kind of have that luxury where someone, an IT services company needed like a systems engineer, and it's local to me, and I got those coming out of my ass. So
Right, but you're not. I mean, I guarantee they're 25% fees, or even part pay. Then you're not doing 15% fees. You're not running in line to work with all the other recruiting firms.
right.
And not that you did it to build. You couldn't have done that anyway in the past to have a $5 million firm. So I get you were really good at what you did. I'm just saying the perspective that people have when they go to retained, they realize that it's nuts for someone not to work with you on contingency. It's insane.
And I think that's kind of what that's
Right, like, of course you're gonna work with me.
said, where you're like, well, once you've done that, when you look back, you're like, okay, well, this is a piece of cake in comparison. The other thing too that's interesting. So you mentioned about like the 5 million peak. So for a long time, my focus was to keep temp billings high. Not that that's not a good thing. That's the business you're in, and not that you and I won't do some of that together. But my only view of what could be recurring revenue as a recruiter was mostly temp, and it's a great example of it, but it's not the only one. And I realized that consulting fees, retainers, those things also help smooth out cash flow too. So that was kind of a motivator for going in that direction as well. So that was, the reason I pushed really, really, really hard on the temp side in that business over those years was because that was really the way to keep cash flow smooth. And
Got it. So they get great experience with you. For those of you who don't know my background, you can look it up. I've done a bunch of these shows here, so I won't make this about me. But we bring a lot of experience here. What's kind of fun is there's lots of great activity in this group. And we're also in Recruiters Online, by the way. Join his split board, by the way, recruitingsplits.com. He just rolled that out.
Recruiters Online is Kelvin,
That's
right?
Animals. Yep.
Kelvin, yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so he's on.
I don't know. I feel funny with the animal because I don't know. No, meaning I call him the animal, but it is Mike Kellerman. But I feel like it's almost like Superman and Clark Kent. Like it's like a secret identity. Like, could we say Mike Kellerman and the animal at the same time? You know what I mean? Like it feels weird. I feel like I'm betraying like a superhero thing. I really do.
Giving away his secret identity.
Well, it's either Mike Kellerman, like mild-mannered recruiter Mike Kellerman, becomes the animal on Wednesdays at noon. I love him to death. But I don't know. But enough of that segue. So, Chris, you spend a lot of time in the groups. That's why you're a great host on this stuff. You provide tons of value. We talked about it a little bit last week. When you're in a mood, you'll go off on them, but I like it. But you're very passionate about it. What? A couple of them, and we're gonna try to keep the show to like a half hour each week, so you guys all tune in, and don't want you to feel this obligation to doing an hour show. But some of the things jumped out at you this week. What are some of the comments? Chris Pine, that's who you look at. You get that all the time, right? Chris Pine, that's who you get, right? You handsome bastard. You don't get Chris Pine?
I don't know if that specifically comes up, but I'll take it.
Well, who do you get? You're a very handsome man with your piercing blue eyes and your square jaw. I got a round face and balding head. It's not Chris Pine. Who do you get?
I don't know. Nobody can.
Oh, stop! But look at you blushing. Look at you blushing. All right. So, anywho, what struck you this week?
So I had I thought that the conversation around terms. Fees and terms was kind of interesting, and the reason I mentioned that is because so initially started off as, hey, what kind of fee do you charge, and do you ask for anything up front? What kind of guarantee do you do? And I always think that that's an interesting conversation when that pops up, because if you notice, there's quite a few responses, and a lot of them are pretty basic, which that's fine, but it doesn't really provide a lot of insight, because I feel like when you're talking about fee percentages that you're charging and how much you're getting up front and what your guarantee period is, I feel like it's a very nuanced thing. There's a lot of factors in it.
Yeah.
So I feel like a few people did put some great context in there to kind of like qualify like why they do it the way they do. And then there's a bunch of data from some other folks, but
you don't like when you like, and I did too. You like qualifying. You don't like absolutes. Right, they totally drive you bananas.
Always.
Right. But you see a lot of that in the groups.
Well, like for example, I think there was a post not that long ago about like what's everybody's ROI on like Monster, right? And some people are like that. No way, never. It's shit. Well, because it all depends on our individual experiences, right? Like I have access to it among others, and sometimes.
Well, but it depends what you do with it. Like not to
Yeah, and like even in that context, I said, for what you're describing, for that. There was one comment that was funny. Tammy always cracks me up. She said, I miss the good old days when payment was due on start date. I still remember going to like offices to like pick up a check, especially because when you have your own firm, especially in the beginning, you're bootstrapping and every dollar counts and the timing of every dollar counts. Like I remember like showing up to walk the candidate in the door, but also pick up the check. And my default when on my agreements, when I do the contingency anyway, is that it is due on offer acceptance, net 30, and the thought process there is that they're like, well, I don't want to pay unless the person starts, which I get, and my thought process there is most of the time, 2 weeks notice, etc. They've started,
and how many people pay you like that? A lot, right? What percentage of people pay you?
3/4 of them.
Right, which is the lesson for people, right? Like, things haven't. I mean, they can change for the masses, but they don't have to change at all. It's the same as, we process, temps, in our back office, right? And a lot of people pay in 30 days. That's kind of the industry average. We are way lower than that because we got people. A lot of people default to 30 days. I'm like, did you add, 7 days? We have people that are good. That's all. I have recruiters, that's all they ever do. Every client, 7 days. And they pay it. Yeah. Because it just needs a little educating and a little conviction. And you'll get your terms a lot of the time.
And when I say 7 days, and what the pushback I'll get on the agreement is usually them saying, well, so here's the thing. Our AP cycle is this. I can't be sure that they're all going to be 7 days, but like we cut checks like every 2 Fridays. So like at most we'd be out like maybe 14 days. So they're basically coming to you like explaining themselves, which is also great because it's nice to have insight into a client's payment cycles because then you know when things are coming along or whether it's a problem. But if you say 7, you just put it in the agreement 7 days. Well, a lot of them sign it, a lot of them pay, and yeah, if they pay within 30 days, I'm good. I don't really like if they're staying inside of 30 days, it's not costing me extra.
Yeah, when you go beyond it, of course, it all it does is if you do it and people, well, all right, they're good, they're a big company, I can let them pay in 60 days. You're giving them an unconditional guarantee at 60 days. Like I don't care how ethical a company is, you fire someone on day 40 and you haven't paid, that's a real hard check for someone to write. Know what I mean?
Yeah, well, and that's why. So, like, Beth had jumped in saying something about 60 days net, 60 days guarantee, which you definitely don't want to do because basically what you're doing is giving a free ride for the whole time. The guarantee means nothing because they're just going to, they can let the guy go in 59 days and they're just not going to write you a check and go.
Right. And cash is king, right? King is gold, right? The golden rule. These were the gold rules.
And one of the things I learned probably only really a few years ago was, maybe the last 3 or 4 years, was that like you gotta tie your guarantee, your payment terms. Like you have to. It doesn't matter what your payment terms or your guarantee is. Like somebody starts. Like it's one thing if you have a temp because you can cut them off, right? If they're getting bad with payment, it doesn't usually come to that, but you have leverage, right? So you could always pull their person. But you put somebody on a direct hire, they've started, and then you're chasing them for payment.
So explain what you mean by tying them together.
Sure. So basically in my agreements, it's something along the lines of the guarantee is applicable so long as the payment terms are met. So if my payment terms are, net 30 from offer acceptance and you signed that agreement and, and that's usually, they usually do pay within like, a week or two of the person starting, which is within the term. Then if they pay in like 45 days, okay, cool, but you're not getting a replacement. Or is it my discretion? Like
yeah, or the way, and I totally subscribe to that. And what and all my branches and myself when I was running desks for years and years and years, you'd make that phone call on day, and typically I do like all right, 15 days payment contingent the guarantee of and I didn't mind going into the replacement. I really didn't, because I came from the school of, if it didn't work out in 30 days, I'm not in the business of getting a check for 25 grand and doing that. At least I'm in control of it. 15 days, and on day 13, and I don't have it, which is most of the time, there's a message going on saying, hey, just wanted to remind you that it's due in 2 days in order to have the extended guarantee. So, and I would position it that way, that our guarantee is none. If you pay it here, we'll do a 30-day unconditional, or it's 30-day unconditional and an extended warranty for payment here. So exactly what you're saying.
It's something, and then there's a motivation for them, because sometimes I see late fees get tossed out there, and late fees are pipe dream. If you can get them, congratulations. But if you're just adding to the bill of a customer who's already not paying you,
fool's gold.
On that one, you're not congratulations, you made your AR higher, you're still not going to collect on it, or at best, maybe what that does is you get them in a position where they negotiate and you waive the late fees because they paid. But come on, like you were saying, you got to tie it to something that's of value to them. And I mean, this just comes from years of eating what I kill and not really having any financial backer or anything. So I had to figure out, how do I make sure that I'm getting paid in a timely manner, and at the same time maintain a good relationship with the client so they can keep giving me services, and also not get myself in a position where it's getting harder and harder to collect on, right? The person's already started, it's been weeks, all the time that passes, it gets further and further away.
Yeah, listen, I have tons of bills in my company now. Guess what? I have no problem with cash flow. None whatsoever. However, it's very smart to be smart about how you pay your vendors. Those that insist on fast payments or instant pay or locking in me to a pull ACH, they get their money as they dictate. Those that send me an invoice with a term of 30 days, 45 days, I'll program into the system to begin processing on 30 days.
I look at that from this owner perspective too. You pay your bills at the last possible minute, more or less, right? But like you said, you gave certain vendors more attention, and the only way for you as a recruiter to be that vendor is to ask for those terms. So if you don't say net 10 to start, or 7 days on temp, like you said, they're going to go to the bottom of the pile. They're not going to pay any faster than they have to. So if you don't make yourself one of those vendors that you just described, they're not going to do it for you.
Yeah, I think people, when they see feedback, if they don't do that, I think they fall into the trap, Chris, of feeling like, well, everyone else is giving it away. It's changed. This is how it is, and I can't get, it's fine. But it's, as we're saying, it's not true. If someone agrees that they will pay you in X terms in order to have the guarantee, they will be worried. If you let them know, look, there isn't a guarantee if we don't get the money nicely, but I'd like to be able to be there for you, but it needs to be paid by X. They'll pay you. Now, they don't really push back, or if they did push back when you're making the deal, why wouldn't they agree to do that if they're planning on paying you? The only time someone really pushes back is if they're not doing it. You know what I mean? Why on earth would they possibly have it? If you're going to pay me in 30 days, why are we worried about the 15 days, not getting your guarantee? If you're going to pay me, you're going to pay me.
Right.
Anytime anyone negotiates these weird things and they come back, well, we need a credit term of 90 days. Why? You agreed you're going to pay, and you have plenty of money to pay it in 7 days.
Yeah, and that's the same thing with refunds, where I don't do refund agreements, and I haven't in years.
So you don't do an unconditional element to you at all?
What's that?
You don't do a 30-day unconditional refund period? It's all replacement?
It's replacement. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not going to say that at my discretion at times.
Totally different point.
You know what? I didn't do a good job for you here, and I don't think I could find you somebody else. So I'd actually rather they have their money back, so I'm not on the hook to try to do it again. But I'd rather have that be my choice. But if you're talking to someone who, a customer, a potential customer, who says, I need it to be 100% refund, even if it's 89 days in, you got to kind of wonder about their motivations, and you got to kind of wonder about what is it you're trying to accomplish here? Are you trying to are you so focused on hedging your risk that you're not thinking about the important thing here, which is filling the job? So maybe filling this job isn't that important for them. and maybe
Well, filled it with the right person. Yeah, it's weird.
to work with. And maybe you're going to send them a bunch of people that they're not going to interview and they're going to dick around and kick tires because maybe they're not really serious about hiring. Because if you're serious about filling a position, you're spending the money to fill the position because there's a need there. If you're more concerned about people getting money back, I think they're focused on the wrong things. I don't think you're in alignment.
All right, so what else did you disagree with on there? What struck you as
I disagree with. I agree with things too.
No, I know, and you've agreed with a bunch of these, but what are the things on there? Just I think this will be the one for today, and in the future, we won't have as much preface about us. We won't have as much airport hangar talk, and we can get into more.
So a couple things that struck me were one, I think the fee percentages are all over the place because everybody in that thread is probably all over the place in terms of like the markets they serve and the industries they're in. Because there are certain norms, right, in certain industries or in certain geographic areas, like there's kind of going rates and stuff like that. So I wouldn't knock anybody for their pricing because there's more to the story, right? If they say they charge 20%, that probably is a good reason that they charge that. If I'm not going to be that person who says you should always charge you're not doing 25-30%.
Yeah, you're kind of that person. I am too. Yes, you are. You're meaning what we don't get in our group is a lot of those 10% people or 15%, which drives me insane. Thank God. And there's a couple out there, but boo-hoo. I mean, boo, not a boo-hoo. I mean, just oh no, I think that's totally that drives me nuts.
Yeah, because below a certain threshold, it is kind of not worth it. I don't know. That's just a different market. But most of the people in here, they're talking 20 plus, which is fine. Because again, I'm not going to be like you're 20, it should be 25. Because I don't know anything about you.
No, I'm with you. I'm with you there. I think I'm with you there. You start getting into the 10% fees, 12% flat doing this. It's you got to work it a little harder. That's all. Like they'll pay it or move on. You'll.
And some things that you could think about too when you're pricing is if you can get some kind of a retainer, and I don't mean necessarily full-blown executive retained search where it's 33%, like that type of model. Like I've had situations that were, that I hate using the term container.
I was gonna say,
because customers have no idea what the fuck you're talking about.
Retingency.
So basically, if you tell someone I had a friend of mine who's got a small law firm. I hired a paralegal for her, and I did it at a reasonable fee. And I said, she's an attorney. She works on retainer. So I said, I'm not going to do it like a 33. That's crazy, right? So I said, listen, the fee on this is probably going to be like 15 grand. Why don't you give me like $4 up front just to kick the search off and pay the rest when you're done. I'll do something like that because that doesn't make sense to follow like your usual retained search executive model because it doesn't fit it, but it's getting some commitment from them up front. So I think that when I've done some of that to the point where people are saying, I was thinking about asking for like $5,000 up front to get started. I think that you can do that. And if you're comparing it to, any type of work you get done, there's usually a deposit, right? If I have a contractor work on my house, they need money up front for the materials and then they get paid the rest when they get the work done, right? So they're usually asking me for something up front. And you got to just make sure the client understands why it matters for the client. You're giving my full attention.
Right.
Instead of a contingency search where I'm working on a bunch of things, you're giving me some money up front. You want top priority, or one of my couple top priorities. So you're getting my dedicated attention. I can spend resources on this. There's more tools I can employ because it's costing money, but I can spend that money because basically I know that this is going to get filled. And the other thing is I can give you potentially more enough because they don't even know what it's about.
Look, but even and all those things you're saying, I totally agree with.
I can give you a better fee and a better guarantee. So here's where the beauty of it is, right? You tell them, hey, listen, I could do this for 20% because you're giving me money down because I have a greater certainty of billing. But maybe you normally would charge 25, right? So you charge them a little bit less, or tell them you normally charge 30 and charge 25 instead. My point is, from the customer's perception, because they're putting money down, they're getting a better overall price.
Yeah, bingo.
And it's anything on guarantee, right? I'll do a 6-month guarantee because I know I've never had to replace someone in the 90 to 180 day window, but it sounds great for the customer. So I'm like, contingency, you have a shorter guarantee period, but if there's more commitment from you up front, I can give you a better price. I can give you a longer guarantee. And you and I both know that neither of those things will matter but the customer does. Like, does that make sense?
Yeah, and the very nature of you demanding it, asking for it with confidence, sets you apart from everyone else, and that's what that alone is what's going to provide value. You know, because people want that. No, you do. You want, when someone sells to you, you want them to be good at. You want them to be good and take some control of that. You want them to get. You don't want the oh yes sir. And you don't ever feel good about that relationship.
Yeah.
So
if you're my attorney something to work. I mean, the attorney gets a retainer, and if I didn't give him a retainer, then I wonder if and when he's doing the work that he needs to do with.
Yep. And next week we could talk about contingency retainers if we remember. So before we go, because
sorry about that.
There's a question. When you got to a $5 million company, how many recruiters did you have on payroll? Is asked.
I had 3 full-time recruiters, and I and my partner were doing most of the sales side of it. I would say $4 million of that roughly was temp, right? And then probably maybe a little bit less than $1 million was direct hire. But that was 3 full-time recruiters that, in a way, I had things split out. They weren't full desk; they were just recruiters.
Yeah.
So I had myself, my partner were business development. My 3 recruiters were just working on what we fed them. So I would get the requirement, figure out everything they needed, disseminate that to them. But I also had I had a bunch of interns walking. So I usually had some interns helping out with like a bunch of dumb little stuff. I didn't put them on anything significant because they come and go, right? So it's hard to have process. But then I had a sourcer, just a kind of an admin / sourcer, kind of a catch-all. So this person, and I have my VA do that now, but basically helping with kind of organizing lists and going out and grabbing all the resumes or LinkedIn profiles or looking up email addresses, all the tedious stuff. Whatever could have my recruiters on the phone as much as possible was what that person was helping to support. Like, I would give them guidelines as far as like the sourcing parameters, because I'm fairly good with, manipulating, bullying, and that kind of thing. And I'd say, okay, what's that bringing back? Try this combination, whatever. I'd take a look at some of the lists they have of the recruiters, just kind of call them real quick, just make sure that they were on the right track. But the 3 of them were banging the phone all day long, just calling candidates.
Yeah, cool. All right, man. So anyway, I think that's our show for today. Next week, I want to continue on this contingency thing, get into a couple of new topics. But thanks, everyone, for joining. Make sure you check us out. We'll keep this short and sweet. Different layout than the other shows that we've done. Again, level up. Got to level up your game, whatever level you're in.
Game. So I guess I got to get a microphone or something like that.
We'll get you a microphone on the next go around. So, all right, everyone. We'll see you next week.